Kindness is one of the most admired human qualities. It has the power to heal, to connect, to bring light into dark places. Yet, when kindness is constant, excessive, and unbalanced, it transforms from a virtue into a silent danger. The danger is subtle, because society praises kindness without limit. But in reality, kindness without boundaries is not kindness, it is self-erasure. When kindness becomes a burden at its best, kindness is a choice, a conscious act of generosity. But when a person feels they must always be kind, it ceases to be freedom and becomes obligation. Instead of an expression of love, it becomes a burden. Psychologically, this is exhausting. The overly kind person finds themselves saying yes when they want to say no, smiling when they feel hurt, helping others even when their own energy is depleted. On the surface, they appear calm and generous. Inside, they are drowning. This is the paradox: the more they give, the more invisible they become. The loss of authenticity. Excessive kindness strips away authenticity. A person who always agrees, who always softens, who always avoids conflict is not showing who they really are. They are presenting a mask. That mask may look admirable, but it hides anger, frustration, and unmet needs. Over time, this gap between the inner truth and the outer performance grows painful. The person begins to feel disconnected from themselves. They forget what they truly want, because they are so busy serving the wants of others. This is the quiet tragedy of unbalanced kindness. It doesn't just hide the truth from others, it hides it from yourself. How kindness invites exploitation. Human nature is complex. While some people respect kindness, others exploit it. A person who never refuses, never demands, never sets boundaries becomes an easy target for manipulation. At work, they are given extra tasks without reward. In friendships, they are the one everyone relies on, but no one truly checks on. In love, they are taken for granted, their sacrifices unnoticed because they are constant. The danger here is not only exhaustion, but the heartbreaking realization that people valued their kindness, not their humanity. The hidden anger of the overly kind. One of the least acknowledged dangers is the anger that grows beneath the surface. Kindness without limits creates resentment. The person begins to feel unappreciated, overlooked, and used. But because they have trained themselves never to express negativity, this anger has no outlet. It stays buried, turning into bitterness, passive aggression, or even physical illness. Ironically, the attempt to avoid conflict through excessive kindness often creates the very conflicts they fear. Because suppressed truth always returns, usually louder than before. The psychological trap. From a psychological perspective, the overly kind often fall into what is called fawning behavior. This is a trauma response, a survival strategy learned in childhood. If, as children, love felt conditional, they may have learned to be endlessly pleasing in order to avoid rejection. As adults, this survival habit looks like generosity, but it is rooted in fear, the fear of being unloved if they stop giving. The tragedy is that this fear prevents them from ever experiencing real love, because real love requires being seen, not just as a giver, but as a whole person. The philosophy of boundaries. Philosophers through history have warned of extremes. Aristotle spoke of virtue as balance. The Taoists spoke of harmony. Excessive kindness is not balance, but excess. It ignores the principle that for a giving to be meaningful, it must come from freedom, not compulsion. Boundaries are the solution. A boundary is not cruelty. It is the line that protects kindness from being corrupted. Without boundaries, kindness is wasted. With boundaries, it becomes sacred. True kindness is not about pleasing everyone. It is about giving honestly, in a way that nourishes both self and other. The illusion of endless patience. People often admire those who seem endlessly patient and giving. They say, "She's so kind, she never complains," or "He's the one you can always count on." But behind this praise lies an illusion. Endless patience is not a sign of strength, it is often a symptom of suppressed truth. When someone never expresses dissatisfaction, they are not more virtuous, they are simply carrying the weight alone. Patience without honesty is like a dam holding back water. Sooner or later, the pressure builds, and the flood comes. The danger is that by the time the flood breaks, the damage is much greater. Relationships collapse not because of one argument, but because of years of silence. Kindness without self-respect. There is a critical difference between kindness rooted in self-respect and kindness rooted in self-neglect. The first empowers both giver and receiver. The second drains the giver while enabling others to remain careless. A person who is kind without self-respect eventually feels invisible. They begin to believe their worth exists only in what they provide for others. This belief is corrosive, because it teaches them to measure their value not by who they are, but by how much they give away. And once you start believing your worth lies outside yourself, you are at the mercy of those who take. The cultural trap of niceness. Modern culture often confuses niceness with goodness. Niceness is about appearances, being agreeable, pleasant, uncontroversial. Goodness, however, sometimes requires conflict. It requires saying no to injustice, confronting disrespect, standing firm in truth. An obsession with being nice makes people afraid to disappoint anyone. They hide their opinions, they silence their needs, they tolerate mistreatment. But in doing so, they betray themselves. Philosophically, this is a failure to live authentically. Nietzsche once wrote that to live truthfully requires courage, the courage to sometimes displease others. Kindness without courage is not moral strength, it is avoidance. The loneliness of the overly kind. It may sound strange, but those who are too kind are often the loneliest. Because they never show their struggles, others assume they have none. Because they always listen, others forget to ask about their hearts. Their relationships become one-sided, they give, others take. They comfort, others lean. But when they finally need someone, they look around and realize no one knows how to show up for them. This loneliness is piercing. It feels like shouting in a crowded room where no one hears you, because you've spent years teaching them only to hear your kindness, not your truth. The spiritual dimension. From a spiritual perspective, kindness without boundaries is not true compassion. True compassion includes the self. To neglect your own soul while caring for others is not holiness, it is imbalance. The Buddha taught the middle path, not too much, not too little. The danger of excessive kindness is that it breaks this balance. It turns giving into self-sacrifice, which eventually leads to resentment rather than love. To be truly kind, one must first be whole. An empty vessel cannot pour water. The hidden strength of saying no. One of the greatest acts of kindness is the courage to say no. No to exploitation. No to disrespect. No to the slow erosion of self-worth. Saying no is not cruelty, it is clarity. It teaches others how to value you. It teaches them that your kindness is a gift, not a guarantee. And paradoxically, it makes your kindness more powerful, because it comes from freedom, not fear. A person who cannot say no is not free. A person who can say no with love is both free and trustworthy. The cost to mental health. Psychologically, the danger of always being too kind is burnout. Anxiety builds from constant self-suppression. Depression grows from unmet needs. Stress accumulates because every smile hides a truth left unspoken. Over time, this shapes identity. The overly kind person may begin to see themselves as weak, powerless, or unworthy of respect. They forget their own desires, their own dreams. Mental health professionals often note that beneath the surface of people-pleasing lies deep fear, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of being unlovable. Healing begins only when kindness is rebalanced with courage. Conclusion, or the beginning of change. The danger of always being too kind is not simply that others may use you. The deeper danger is that you may lose yourself. You may silence your truth so completely that you forget who you are beneath the endless giving. And the greatest tragedy of all is this: the world does not need more people who erase themselves in the name of kindness. The world needs people who can love fiercely, give generously, and also stand firmly in their own worth. Because the kindest thing you can do for others is to show them your authentic self, not just your smile, but your strength. The psychology of overkindness. To understand the danger of always being too kind, we must explore the psychology behind it. At the root, many overly kind people struggle with a deep fear of rejection. They believe that if they ever show anger, frustration, or disappointment, others will leave them. Kindness becomes their survival strategy. But survival strategies, when used excessively, turn into prisons. Instead of expressing genuine emotions, the overly kind person puts on a mask, always agreeable, always pleasant. Over time, this mask grows heavy. They forget where the mask ends and where their true self begins. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social face we wear for others. If kindness becomes only persona and not truth, the individual lives disconnected from their authentic soul. And disconnection from the soul is one of the deepest sources of human suffering. The paradox of attraction. Ironically, being too kind often reduces attraction in relationships. Respect, whether in romance or friendship, is built not only on generosity but also on boundaries. People may admire endless kindness at first, but over time, they begin to take it for granted. A partner who never challenges, never disagrees, never asserts their needs becomes predictable, even dull. Real intimacy thrives on contrast, moments of yes and no, closeness and distance, giving and receiving. Thus, the paradox: the person who is too kind, hoping to be loved more, may end up loved less. Because without self-respect, their kindness feels less like love and more like submission. Historical and philosophical reflections. History and philosophy remind us that balance has always been the key to wisdom. Aristotle spoke of the golden mean, the virtue that lies between two extremes. Courage, for example, is the balance between recklessness and cowardice. Kindness, too, must find its mean. Too little kindness leads to cruelty and isolation. Too much kindness leads to exploitation and erasure of the self. True virtue lies in measured kindness, generosity with boundaries, compassion with strength. Even religious and spiritual traditions echo this. In Christianity, Jesus displayed kindness, but he also overturned tables in the temple when injustice prevailed. In Buddhism, compassion is central, but so is wisdom, which prevents compassion from becoming blind sacrifice. Why people exploit the overly kind. It is not always malice that leads others to exploit kind people. Sometimes it is simply human nature. If a door is always open, people will walk through it. If a friend always says yes, people will keep asking. If a partner never complains, people assume everything is fine. The overly kind unknowingly train others to expect endless giving. They become like an invisible support system, always present, rarely acknowledged. But this is not only harmful to the giver. It is harmful to the receiver too, because it robs them of the opportunity to grow. If someone else always sacrifices, they never learn responsibility. In this way, excessive kindness creates imbalance on both sides. The path toward healthy kindness. The transformation begins when a person realizes that kindness is not the same as weakness, and boundaries are not the same as cruelty. To shift from dangerous kindness to healthy kindness, several steps are necessary. 1. Awareness, recognizing patterns of overgiving and their emotional cost. 2. Boundaries, learning to say no without guilt. 3. Self-compassion, understanding that caring for oneself is as important as caring for others. 4. Authenticity, speaking truth, even when it risks displeasing someone. 5. Selective giving, choosing wisely where and to whom to give energy. This journey is not easy. It requires courage to break the cycle of people-pleasing. But once taken, it leads to deeper relationships, stronger identity, and a life lived with integrity. The emotional exhaustion of endless giving. One of the most damaging consequences of always being too kind is emotional exhaustion. When every interaction is focused on giving, listening, and accommodating, the kind person forgets to recharge. Their inner reserves of energy shrink, but because they are expected to always show up with a smile, they force themselves to keep going. This creates a cycle of depletion. They wake up tired, carry the weight of others' needs, and fall asleep unfulfilled. Over time, this leads to burnout, not only physical fatigue but also a sense of emotional emptiness. The tragedy is that others may not even notice. Because the overly kind rarely complain, their exhaustion remains invisible until it explodes in breakdown or withdrawal. The silent resentment. While the overly kind appear peaceful on the surface, inside they may carry silent resentment. Each unspoken no that turned into a yes leaves a mark. Each sacrifice made without acknowledgement builds frustration. But because they believe expressing anger is wrong, they keep suppressing it. Resentment grows in the shadows, poisoning their relationships. Eventually, they may either erupt unexpectedly or quietly distance themselves from everyone. Psychologically, resentment is a signal. It shows where boundaries have been crossed. But if ignored, it transforms kindness into bitterness. The person who once gave freely begins to feel trapped by the very generosity that once defined them. The philosophical cost of self-erasure. From a philosophical perspective, the greatest danger of always being too kind is self-erasure. When your identity is built solely on serving others, you risk forgetting your own essence. Existentialist thinkers like Sartre and Kierkegaard warned of this. To live authentically, a person must face their own freedom, their own choices. If one constantly molds themselves to please others, they are not truly living, they are existing as a reflection of others' desires. Authenticity requires the courage to say, "This is who I am," even if it displeases you. Without that courage, kindness becomes a mask that hides the truth of the soul. How relationships suffer. In personal relationships, being too kind creates imbalance. At first, partners may appreciate the endless giving. But over time, the relationship lacks depth. There is no healthy tension, no growth, no authenticity. A partner who always agrees denies the other the chance to face honest reflection. A friend who always sacrifices prevents the other from learning reciprocity. Ironically, relationships thrive not on perfection but on honesty. True intimacy is born in moments of conflict resolved with love, not in endless avoidance. Too much kindness, therefore, weakens the very relationships it seeks to preserve. Toward a new understanding of kindness. To escape the danger of overkindness, We must redefine kindness itself. True kindness is not about endless giving. It is about conscious giving. It is about recognizing when help empowers others and when it enables their dependence. It is about balancing compassion with truth, generosity with self-respect. The wisest kindness is not the kind that says yes to everything, but the kind that says yes to what matters, and no to what destroys balance. It is kindness with clarity, strength, and authenticity. The hidden trap of kindness. Kindness is one of humanity's highest virtues. It is the glue that holds relationships together, the spark that creates trust, and the moral foundation of a healthy society. Without kindness, the world becomes cold and hostile. But like any virtue, when taken to the extreme, kindness transforms into a weakness. The danger of always being too kind is that it can silently destroy the very life it is trying to protect. Those who are constantly kind often wear invisible chains. They smile even when tired. They agree even when they disagree. They give even when their soul is empty. To the world, they look generous, noble, and admirable. But inside, they feel drained, unseen, and sometimes deeply alone. The psychology of people-pleasing. Psychologists often describe excessive kindness as a form of people-pleasing. This pattern is rooted in fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being unloved. Many overly kind people learned in childhood that love must be earned through obedience and sacrifice. When they pleased others, they were rewarded. When they expressed anger, sadness, or resistance, they were punished or ignored. So as adults, they carry the same lesson: if I want to be loved, I must always be good, agreeable, and selfless. But the cost of this belief is enormous. By living only for others, they forget how to live for themselves. Their needs become invisible, even to themselves. They become experts in listening to others' desires but strangers to their own hearts. The loss of authenticity. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote that the greatest despair is not to be oneself. When kindness becomes a mask, the individual loses authenticity. They say yes when their heart screams no. They smile when they want to cry. They protect harmony on the outside while chaos grows inside. This loss of authenticity is devastating, because true connection can only exist when two people show their real selves. If one person is hiding behind endless kindness, the relationship becomes one-sided. The other person falls in love not with the true self but with a pleasing illusion. And illusions never last. The paradox of attraction and respect. It may seem logical that constant kindness would make someone more lovable. Yet in reality, it often has the opposite effect. In romantic relationships, partners who are too nice frequently lose respect and attraction. Why? Because love thrives on balance. It requires both giving and receiving, both harmony and challenge. When one person always agrees, never confronts, never stands up for themselves, the relationship loses depth. The partner begins to feel that something is missing: passion, honesty, tension, authenticity. Instead of admiration, they may feel pity or indifference. Respect is built not only on kindness but also on strength. A person who can say no is respected far more than one who always says yes. The silent resentment. Another danger of excessive kindness is the quiet resentment it breeds. At first, the overly kind person believes they are doing the right thing by sacrificing. But with each unspoken boundary, frustration grows. With each ignored need, bitterness develops. They continue to smile, but inside they keep a secret score: all the times they gave without receiving, all the times they forgave without apology, all the times they listened without being heard. Eventually, this resentment leaks out, in passive-aggressive comments, sudden withdrawal, or complete burnout. Relationships collapse not because of one argument, but because of years of unspoken truth. The loneliness of the overly kind. Ironically, people who are always kind often feel the loneliest. Because they never share their struggles, others assume they have none. Because they always listen, others forget to ask about their feelings. Thus, their relationships become one-directional. They give support but rarely receive it. And when they finally need help, they find no one there, because everyone has grown used to seeing them as the strong, endlessly giving figure. This loneliness is one of the heaviest burdens of kindness. To the world, they are surrounded by people. But inside, they feel unseen and unheard. The cost to mental and physical health. Psychologically, excessive kindness is exhausting. It leads to chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. The constant suppression of emotions takes a toll on the nervous system. People-pleasers often suffer from insomnia, fatigue, and even physical illnesses caused by stress. The body keeps score of every swallowed no. When the mind refuses to speak its truth, the body begins to scream it through headaches, stomach pain, tension, or burnout. True kindness should bring joy. But when kindness feels like a duty, It slowly destroys both mind and body. The philosophical lesson of balance throughout history, philosophers have warned against extremes. Aristotle's concept of the golden mean teaches that virtue lies in balance. Courage lies between cowardice and recklessness. Generosity lies between greed and waste. Kindness, too, must find its balance. Too little kindness creates cruelty. Too much kindness creates self-destruction. True wisdom lies in measured kindness, giving freely, but not at the expense of one's soul. Even spiritual traditions agree. The Buddha taught compassion, but also the middle path. Jesus showed mercy, but also righteous anger when he overturned the tables in the temple. Real kindness is not blind surrender, it is love guided by wisdom. The strength of boundaries. One of the greatest myths is that setting boundaries is selfish. In reality, boundaries are what make kindness sustainable. Without boundaries, kindness becomes exploitation. With boundaries, kindness becomes powerful and respected. To say no is not to reject someone. It is to respect both yourself and them. It communicates, I value a relationship enough to be honest. I give to you not out of fear, but out of freedom. A kindness without boundaries is slavery. A kindness with boundaries is strength. How to transform dangerous kindness into healthy kindness. Escaping the danger of overkindness requires a journey of self-discovery and courage. Here are key steps. 1. Self-awareness. Notice when kindness is draining you instead of fulfilling you. 2. Learn to say no. Start small, but practice it with honesty and calmness. 3. Prioritize authenticity. Speak your truth even if it risks disapproval. 4. Value reciprocity. Give to those who also give back. Relationships must be mutual. 5. Practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same care you give to others. 6. Redefine kindness. Understand that kindness includes protecting your own well-being. The true purpose of kindness is meant to uplift, not to destroy. It is meant to heal, not to wound. True kindness empowers both giver and receiver. It does not erase the self but expresses the self with love. The danger of always being too kind is that it blinds us to this truth. It convinces us that love means endless sacrifice, when in reality, love means balance, giving and receiving, speaking and listening, holding and letting go. The world does not need people who erase themselves in the name of kindness. The world needs people who are strong enough to be kind and wise enough to set boundaries. Because the kindest gift you can give others is not your silence, not your endless compliance, but your authentic, balanced, and whole self.